My granddaughter is 4 years old. Chatty little girl. When she was 2, she started talking in complete sentences. It was very odd. It had like having a narrator of a toddler's life. Very bright. Pretty good with games, puzzles, that sort of thing. Now, I'll admit that my son, who is quite fond of his niece, lets her win sometimes. Handicaps himself a little bit, a little slow in the reaction, just, and we know that this happens, and we know when this happens because you'll hear my little granddaughter saying, "Jason is a loser." That's kind of rude. It's a beautiful little girl, just loving and kind and friendly, but she takes great pride in her own performance and takes a lot of fun in the fact that sometimes she gets the best of an adult, and so she loves to say, "Jason is a loser," or, "No, Grandpa, that's not how you do it. Let me show you." Bright little girl, but could use a little. The social graces kind of come slowly, don't they? So then, although Jesus said, unless you become as a little child, you will in no wise enter the kingdom of heaven, he didn't mean in every way that we should be like a child. And I think we know from the examples he was giving us, when he used that, it was when he was addressing the pridefulness of adults versus the humility of a child, the doubt and faithlessness of an adult versus the trust and faithfulness of a child. So it's not in every way that we should be like a child. We should be childlike in our faith, childlike in our innocence, childlike in our love for God, but not childlike in every way. Children tend to be a little impatient. Children can't wait until something's actually cooked. And children can't wait until it's actually ready, and children can't wait until Christmas morning. They tend to be impatient and impulsive, and they don't understand this delayed gratification concept. They want it, and they want it now because they want it, and they want it now because they want it, and they want it now. You all, if you need, I guess most of us have had children, or known children, or been children. I think all of us have been children. Our scripture today is from Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And when we even hear 1 Corinthians chapter 13, I think all of us, or most of us, in some sense, we know this chapter. We know this. This is the love chapter. It's been said at so many weddings. You have heard so many sermons about it. It is famous. Love is patient, love is kind, love is gentle, etc., etc. All of these things that love is, that where we learn that though I speak with the tongues of angels and men, if I have not love, I'm like a clanging gong. We're all familiar with this. But I'll be honest with you, even though it's only 13 verses toward the end, we kind of glaze over. So let's look at the very end of it. Let's kind of take it backwards, and maybe we can glean something that we haven't seen before. Maybe. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to my childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part. Then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three. And the greatest of these is love. God add God's blessing to this reading of the Word. So, what are we talking about here? We've already determined that it's not everything about being a child that will get us into the kingdom of heaven. Children have to learn something. Children have to learn modes of behavior and courtesy and these sorts of things. There's a learning process. And we all know that children sometimes learn the wrong thing, but sometimes they learn the right thing and can become better Christians for it. But what is Paul talking about here? When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to my childish ways. That's said as an example of where his conversation is going. He's drawing a parallel. He says, it's like this. What I'm trying to tell you is like this. Let me tell you something that we can all relate to. Tell you something that is common in all of our experiences. You remember when you were a child how you spoke, how you thought, how you reasoned. But when you became an adult, something changed. You matured, you grew up, you got better at something, better at talking, better at thinking, better at reasoning. You put an end to your childish ways. That's set as an example of what he's talking about. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part, then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. What's the problem with a child? Some things are wonderful about children. I love children. I love their attitude. I love their enthusiasm. I love their energy. But of the things that they get wrong, of the things that they don't know, it's a simple matter of they have not had the experience. They have not been taught. They haven't been there yet. So many of the things that children see, so many of the problems that children encounter, they're encountering them for the first time ever. First time anyone is rude to them. The first time someone intentionally hurts them. The first time they recognize that somebody else has pain. We can sit there and watch our children grow up and we know that there is a first time for all of these things. They're seeing dimly as through a mirror. They're walking around the corner and they see the reflection of something and they don't know where it is. I'll tell you, one of the weirdest things that happened here one time is I saw lights flashing late at night. I'm walking around turning out the lights in the building and I see lights flashing. And where are these lights? And I look and they seem bright in this window, but they seem brighter still in this window and brighter still in this window. This building, at night when the lights are off, it's a house of mirrors. It's bouncing everywhere. Lights flashing. It's out there. Well, it looks through that window. You have to get up and you block out the reflection in order to see it. Eventually, it turns out that there was an ambulance in our own parking lot, and I didn't know it. I couldn't tell. Until I finally chased it around and seen where it was. And I was seeing dimly. I was seeing as through a mirror. I was distracted. I was seeing the wrong thing. My mind was confused. I was looking for something that wasn't there. I was childlike, trying to figure this out. Now that I've had that experience once, when the lights go off, when I see flashing lights at night, the first place I look is in our parking lot. Because if it's in our parking lot, I've got to figure out what's going on and deal with it. If it's out there, then somebody else has already taken care of it and I can move on. If it's here, I have to go out and see what the problem is. I've matured. I've learned something. I've been through an experience. That's what Paul's talking about. When I was a child, the first time I ever encountered that, the first time I ever preached, the first time I ever witnessed, the first time I was seeing as through a mirror dimly. The first time, or the second time, or the third time, I did not know what was going on. I was trying to figure this out. But when I became an adult, when I finally got it, when I'd seen it enough times, when I had the experience that I needed to figure this out, I put aside my childish ways. Things got a little more efficient. Things changed because of experience. That's what Paul's talking about. Things should change. We should mature. He's not actually talking about no longer being childlike. He's giving it as an example. When I was a little human, I acted like a little human, but now I'm a big human. When I was a little Christian, or a pre-Christian, or a non-Christian, or a pagan, or something else, I thought in a certain way. I acted in a certain way. I behaved in a certain way. And then he goes on to say, because I didn't have all the facts straight. I was seeing dimly as through a mirror, like an inexperienced child, like someone that didn't know what was going on, because indeed I did not know what was going on. But when I became an adult, I put aside my childish ways. Paul is talking to the Corinthians about so many examples of their immaturity as believers, the bickering over which leader they will follow, or which leadership they will follow, or who's the better evangelist, the bickering about laws and rules and regulations, this this confusion that they have over not knowing who should be in charge. They're acting like children. It's my turn. No, it's my turn. You're it. No, I tagged you first. I called it. It's my turn. I get to sit by the window. They were like children. These days, you're like an adult. Okay, you can sit by the window this time. I'll sit by the window on the way back. Or, I don't much care. It doesn't matter to me. I'll just take a nap. Or, well, it's a short drive. It's going to end soon enough. I've been through this enough times that I find that the joy of sticking my head out the window is not worth the pain of fighting over it. I put aside that childish way. Paul is saying, now that we're Christian, let's put aside an unchristian way. Now that we are Christians, now that we are believers in Jesus Christ, let's put aside these other things. He's talking to them about spiritual gifts, and they're talking about tongues and healings and prophecies and administration and generosity and all these wonderful gifts that various people have, and they're even bickering about that, about which of these gifts is the best, and who's got the most of them, and when can you talk in tongues, and when can you do this, and when can you do that. And then before the chapter starts, he says, but strive for the greater gifts, and I will show you a still more excellent way. This still more excellent way has to do with a gift that none of you has mentioned, that nobody's talking about, that everybody, you're not even calling it a gift. And yet it is such a gift, and that is indeed the gift of love. That's what it is. If I speak with the tongues of mortals and angels but do not have love, I'm a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. It doesn't mean a thing. That great gift, that would be a great gift. I've always wished I knew another language. Some of you know 2 or 3 languages. I know 1, barely. That's a great gift. But if you don't have love behind it, then it's just showing off. Just noise. If I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge and have all faith so as to remove mountains. Boy, now that's a dramatic thing to say. I know that he's over the top here. He's saying, even if you've got the faith it takes to move a mountain, but you don't have love, then even that is nothing. And we would certainly see that. Oh boy, it must have. Look at the miracles that are wrought here. Look at this man prays, and everything he prays comes true. And he asks God, and God seems to listen to him. And boy, this must be a great person. But if that person is not loving, then they're useless to the kingdom. Useless. If I give away all my possessions, if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. If I do all these sacrifices and it's all just look at me, look how much I give, look how generous I am, look how much I've been through, oh how I have suffered for this job. If you don't have love, that's useless. Useless. Then he goes on to tell us what love's like. It's patient. It's not like a child bickering over things, fighting for its own way. It's kind. It's not picking on people or putting folks down. It's not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. Wow, there's a mouthful. There's a lot being said in one little phrase. It is not irritable or resentful. Wow. Does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. And then it gets even worse from my perspective. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Do I endure all things? No, I don't. I'm like a child, impatient. I'm like a child, suffering out loud. I'm like a child, not putting up with things. Irritable and resentful, arrogant and rude, sarcastic. Love never ends, but as for prophecies, they'll come to an end. As for tongues, they'll cease. For knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. The best you can do is less than the best. The best prophecy. We look at the prophets, even the prophets that Jesus was quoting, and we say, that's not what that says. That's not what that means. They're cloudy prophecies. We say that the prophets were such great men, and they were, and that they had such profound things to say, and they were, and we don't understand them, and we say, well, they must have been speaking perfectly. Why is it that we don't understand them? Paul explains why it is. Because indeed they were people. We know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. We explain these things only as far as we can go. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. We're all better than we were because we've got more Jesus in us than we did. We're all better than we were because we understand this more than we did. We're all better than we were because we love God more than we used to. We can all keep getting more Christ-like. Maybe we could get more Jesus in us. Maybe we could be even more patient. Not just as impatient as a child, but certainly not as impatient as we are. Maybe we can get even more patient, even less rude, even less envious or boastful or arrogant. It does not insist on its own way. Then we get back to our scripture, which we so often gloss over. By the time we get there, we know, yes, all these things are imperfect. Yes, love is all these great things, and we are not. Yes, all these other great things that we're not doing are not love, and therefore they're not as good as love. Yes, we understand that. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, and we're all saying, and most of us, I do, every time I see this, I say, but wait a minute, Jesus said, unless you become as a little child, you will in no wise enter the kingdom of heaven. Wait a minute. And I thought, well, Paul must be messing with Jesus' teaching and doing something wrong here, and that's not true. Jesus showed us just how mature love can be. Love can be so mature that it says on the cross, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do. They're like children. They see dimly. They don't get it. Help us to come back to them, Lord. Help them to receive you. Help them to get it. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. When I was not a Christian, I talked like I was not a Christian. I acted like I was not a Christian. I thought like I was not a Christian. I saw things like unlike a Christian. I had no Jesus in me. I didn't care what Jesus thought or how Jesus would do it or what Jesus taught. I just wasn't there. Didn't matter. Now that I'm an adult, I put aside my childish ways. Well, what about now that I'm a Christian? What has he been talking about the whole time? What has this entire section of the letter, this entire sermon of 13 verses, what is Paul trying to tell us? That all of these other things you guys are fighting about, all of the things you fight about in terms of who's the most generous, who's the best cook, who's the best decorator, who speaks in tongues the best, who knows the most Bible, who's the best teacher, who's the right person for the job, who understands sprinkler heads, all these other things. Beautiful though they are, necessary though they are only meaningful insofar as you use them to demonstrate love. If you use tongues to demonstrate tongues, they're useless. It just might as well be noise. If you use prophecy to demonstrate your ability to prophesy, then you show how foolish you are, because we know that even the greatest of prophets was a dim human, was seeing through the mirror, was on this side of the veil, was missing the mark. Now we see in a mirror. We have to understand that, and Jesus said this too. He said, if you understood this saying, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent. The disciples were in the fields cleaning grain. They were walking through some guy's field on the Sabbath day, and they were grabbing heads of grain and shucking them in their hands and just munching on the grain. Well, the truth is, the law of the land said you could do that because nobody was going to starve to death in a field full of food. You couldn't fill your pockets with food, but you could eat while you were there, while you were passing through. It was just the way things were in that day. And the Pharisees said, "Oh, your disciples are breaking the law on the Sabbath. They haven't washed their hands, and they're taking someone else's stuff and all these things." And they were saying they're breaking the law, but they weren't even breaking the law. And Jesus said, if you understood this saying, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned who? The innocent. The innocent. So often we We jump on people because we just know they're guilty and we think they deserve it and we think that they did wrong and we've got to stop them and we've got to put an end to it and we've got to be the hand of justice. We see things that way, and the truth of the matter is they were innocent all along. And if we had been willing to forgive them, then we would have forgiven both the innocent and the guilty. Jesus forgave those who crucified Him on the cross. And they don't get it. They don't understand. They're seeing dimly through the mirror. That's how far this has to go. That's how far we have to go. The truth is that because we are not adequate judges, we can never say, now is the time to hate. Now is the time for revenge. Now is the time to lose patience. We can never do that because we're all looking through a veil. We're all looking through dirty glasses. You wash a window when your glasses are dirty. And now, faith, hope, and love abide. These three. Strip away everything you don't need, because everyone's not going to prophesy, everyone's not going to speak in tongues, everyone's not going to have anything to drop in the plate, everyone's not going to be there. So obviously those things can't be the point of salvation. But everything becomes the point of salvation in the sense that you have love, and if you have love, then if you have love and tongues, then you speak tongues lovingly. If you have love and knowledge of the Bible, then you use that Bible appropriately. If you have love and strength, then you use your strength to help others. If you have love and prophesy, then you are willing to be humble about your own prophecy and not beat somebody else over the head with it. What have we become? We've become Christians. And what is the evidence of that? Not our biblical knowledge, not our generosity, not our skill in any sense, but our love for one another. May we grow into the faith and into the more excellent way that Paul has taught us. May we all learn to love one another.